Bears, blog, boys, you know it all, computer, analytic, geeky nerds. Michael Schneider, Tom Cavanaugh, the Bear, blog, boys, know-it-alls, doing some podcast somewhere. Nobody wants to hear you. Geeks, you pencil-pushing, skinny jean-wearing geeks, you.
Coming to you live from our mama's basement, this is the Bears Blog Boys podcast. I'm your co-host, Tom Cavanaugh, here by myself. My co-host, Michael Snyder, had some technical difficulties, so he could not hop on today. But this was not going to be a super lengthy pod anyway. We were just going to go over some of the camp narratives that we've been hearing, that we are buying into, that we're, extrapolating out to the regular season, which ones we should take, legitimately, and which ones should we take with a grain of salt. So, sorry, we have been very inconsistent about our posting. We've both been very busy. I was just on vacation. I know Snyder his work has been really ramping up. So we've been trying to just, get down a date where we can come on and do live shows for you guys, because we love to do those so much. And we really love interacting with the fans through a live show when they ask questions and whatnot. So I'm really excited to be here today. I'm really excited to talk about training camp. There's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of narratives just spilling out of training camp. Everyone's ready to put the Bears in the Super Bowl game, give them the Lombardi Trophy. I don't want to be a wet blanket by any means and damper the good things that are currently happening in training camp. I just want to, always remind people that training camp is a time for hype to be built, right? And that's totally fine. That's what I love it for. I am just as much of a sucker as anybody else for those training camp clips where I see one good clip and I'm like, that's it. He's going to have an MVP caliber season. I don't care what position it is, which player it is. But then, I think later on, I realized okay, it's time to be realistic a little bit with our expectations, because it's not fair to the player. It's not fair to the Bears. And we've been burned as Bears fans. We've been burned so many times in the past, right? When there is a lot of hype in training. I mean, last year was the epitome of the Bears fan experience. And I'm hopeful that will not happen this year. I think that it is fair to have higher expectations given the moves that the Bears have made, and just who's in charge. But I think it's always important to temper expectations around training camp, around the preseason a little bit. So the first narrative that I wanted to go over is one that I think I've seen the most of. It's probably the biggest narrative, and that's the Bears culture changing, right? I think a lot of players have been, that's the first thing they say in interviews, that it might be the first question they're asked as well, but they always say how has Ben Johnson changed the culture, or has Ben Johnson changed the culture? And it seems like a resounding yes. And that is one I am heavily buying. Probably the one of all the ones we're going to talk about today, I am buying the most. I truly believe that the culture has changed. And the reason why I believe that, the reason I feel strongly about that, is because they all say that there's consequences for their actions when they aren't lined up in the right place, when they aren't repping it out correctly. There's consequences, right? They get pulled from the first team. They get pulled to the sideline. And DJ Moore says, we don't know when we're going to go back and rep that play after we do that. So I just think the culture, the standard is way higher than it's been, especially under Eberflus, but it doesn't sound like there was really a culture or a standard in terms of getting things correctly. I think he gave players the benefit of the doubt way too much. And then that showed on Sundays. I don't think that's the case this year, because everyone, it seems like at some point, has been wrung out by Ben Johnson. And I'm not saying that's the best thing in the world, right? You don't want that being a consistent problem where Ben Johnson's just lashing out at everyone. And I don't think he is. I'm just saying there's a happy medium, but I think it's really important, especially right away with the regime, is, hey, this is our line in the sand. You got to execute it perfectly. And if you don't, you're out of there, right? I think that's very, very important. If the Bears want to reach the heights and become the team we all want them to be, right? Make playoff pushes, because those are the teams, the ones that execute, the ones that are disciplined. Those are the ones that go far in the playoffs. And the Bears have not had that culture for the last 10 years, honestly, maybe more. It's been a while, right? So I'm really excited about that. That's probably the thing I'm excited about the most. Everyone says that this is a different coaching staff. This is a different vibe. If your head's not on straight, you're not going to play. And they're going to pull you out. And I'm really excited about that. I think that's a very, very, it's exactly what the doctor ordered is the best way to put it. Why don't we talk about Caleb Williams? Because in the very beginning of training camp, it sounded like the reports were he was pretty shaky. And before I get to the second half of that, because it sounds like he is playing better, I kind of always expected Caleb to be a bit shaky. This is such a complicated offense, right? Like I talked about on our last episode. Like if you go back and watch the quarterback documentary and you watch Jared Goff go through the play calls, like that's a lot to learn. Jared Goff was saying he has to study that every day, and he had been in the offense for like 4 years, right? And he still had to study all of that verbiage every single day just to make sure he had it down. And just think about it from Caleb's perspective. This is all new information. This is all new reps, right? Like this is all new 11 on 11 reps where he's learning the play calls and then has to go out and execute them for the very first time as a second-year player, right? Jared Goff's been in the league forever. Jared Goff was with McVay, again, another wordy guy in terms of play calls. So I expected struggles. I'm still going to expect struggles. In the season, I do not expect it to be pretty right away. This is not what I think it's going to be better, right, than it was last year. Like I think last year from week 1, you kind of knew there was a lot of issues, right? And it didn't seem like there was a consistent issues, which to me is always a problem, right? That means like something's not clicking, something's not going to work, and there's really no hope of saving it. And I don't think it's going to be like that this year, but will you see Caleb look a little lost at times? I absolutely expect it. It would be crazy for him not to as a second-year player in a new offense with as many play calls, verbiage, with all that stuff. That'd be kind of crazy to expect there not to be hiccups. And that's just not a Caleb thing. That's a whole entire offense thing. You know, there's been a lot of reporting of guys being in the wrong alignment, right? This is a very, like I just talked about with the culture, you know, being on your P's and Q's and really being able to execute. This is a very detail-oriented offense, especially from an alignment perspective, right? There's a lot of motion. You're really condensed in as a receivers. That was not the case last year, right? I think last year the receivers very much had their role, and that's what they did. In this offense, I expect receivers to line up all over the place. And we'll talk about a guy who Ben Johnson literally said, like, that's what they want to do with him. Yeah, I just think that I've expected some struggles with Caleb. I could understand that there are going to be times where it's not going to look pretty, but as long as we see progressive growth, I'm not worried, right? And I think that's what we've been seeing. It's what we've been hearing in training camp, that it's gotten better each day. So I don't know. Again, I wish I could see every single rep and then give like a more detail oriented analysis, but I think that he's exactly where he needs to be. He's doing exactly what he should do. I don't have any strong takes about like me being worried. I'm not worried at all. I'm just really excited to see him in the preseason, and I'm really excited to see when they start practicing against other teams how that goes, because you know, I want to see him in this offense against different defensive looks. And look, Dennis Allen, Ben Johnson even alluded to it. Like they're trying to stop this offense. Like they're not just trying to, you know, boost Caleb Williams' ego. Like they're really trying here. So I know it's a tough task in practice, but I think if there was no struggles, I would be like overly worried about the optimism that's being reported, because I expected there to be struggles. Ben Johnson even said that this is going to be hard. This is where we're going to do our hardest stuff in training camp. And then, you know, I think the clips and the highlights have came a lot more in recent days with Caleb Williams. I think we've seen some of his best plays. We've seen more of that creation. We didn't really see him get creative a whole lot. It was more he was holding on to the ball because he didn't know where to go with it. But that natural playmaking instinct, I thought was really, really stripped from him last year. And I know Ben Johnson's all about structure. He's all on rhythm and timing. But I think if you take that away from Caleb Williams, you are taking away from what makes him special. He was one of the best creative quarterbacks, I think, as a prospect we've ever seen. The ability to extend plays, make throws from literally any arm angle. I think that's what makes him special. So if Caleb can find that happy medium, which I think we've seen in training camp, he's done a little bit of. I think some of his best plays have been outside of structure. That one bomb he had to Zacchaeus yesterday was, I mean, that's the USC Caleb Williams we all know and we all were expecting last year. Those are the special plays he can make. So I think once he gets comfortable enough in the offense to have that judgment of, okay, hey, 1 and 2 are not here, I'm going to break out of the pocket and make a special throw, that's when we're going to see Caleb Williams at his best. That's when we're going to see the first overall pick that we expected to come in here. But that's going to take some time. And I'm just glad that, we're getting hints of it as training camp goes on. I think it's just going to be a gradual process. We got to take, training camp to the end of preseason as a progression, linear curve, evaluate him on that. And then obviously from week 1 to week 18 and see where he's taking leaps and bounds, right? And we just hope that he's taking leaps and bounds because, again, I don't expect him to be like Jaden Daniels from the jump. I just think that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of change. He was in such a bad situation that it honestly could have put him behind the learning curve. So, again, I am right. I think Caleb Williams is right where he should be. I don't have any expectations below or above that. Why don't we talk about a guy I really wanted to talk about, because from the moment he has hit the field again and been healthy, Colston Loveland, Ben Johnson cannot say enough about him. He talked about Colston just taking on like while he was sidelined, taking on more of the learning role than Ben Johnson expected, right? Trying to learn every single aspect of the offense, not just what he should be doing. And he said that was like really, really thinking ahead and really looking at the game differently for such a young player. And I just think that like that's holistically what Colston Loveland gives you. Ironically, like I'm not saying like Colston Loveland was this genius. I never thought he was like this genius that was going to know the entire playbook, but Colston Loveland, his ability to be a chameleon and just kind of line up anywhere and give the offense matchup advantages. That's why the Bears drafted him, right? He can do basically anything from a receiver standpoint in terms of alignment. He can line up outside. He can line up in the slot. He can line up inline. He can run your deep crossers off play action, which the offense wants to do. Or he can be an X receiver and be a possession guy on third down. Like there's really nothing he can't do. And then from a blocking perspective, I think there's a lot of the same similarities where like if you get him on the outside on a smaller corner in the block as a blocker, your run game is going to have a lot of success running to his side because he's a good blocker. And then he can also do things in line too as a blocker. So I just think that was kind of the vision with Colston Loveland. So the fact that he's already taking the extra steps of knowing all the different aspects of the offense, I'm buying this narrative that he's going to be the tight end one and this like joker, chameleon chess piece for Ben Johnson. I think he's going to be one of the biggest pieces that allows Ben Johnson to really unlock all the funky formational stuff that he wants to do. And I always am a little, I guess I'm a little slow to buy into a rookie tight end hitting the ground running, but I am so enthralled from what I've been hearing about Loveland that like, wheels up. Like I'm ready to buy in. I'm ready to buy in from the jump. I think Colston Loveland's going to have an impact, whether he's catching a lot of passes or not. I think just his presence is going to really, really open things up for the Bears offense. And I am absolutely buying it that he can be a focal point of this offense, in the run game, in the pass game. I'm so excited for what he's going to bring. And it sounds like he's taking everything in stride. Like I don't think there's been a lot of hiccups for him. And I kind of expected that, right? He's coming from Michigan, a very similar offense, a run-heavy offense, an offense that asked him to do a lot of different things as a receiver. I mean, I'm just so fired up from what the Bears have right now with Colston Loveland. And it sounds like he's really it's only been one report. I haven't seen this reporting everywhere, but it sounds like he is really stepping into the tight end one role from the jump. And that doesn't surprise me because, again, I love Cole Kmet, right? I think Cole Kmet's a very solid player. But does he give you the same alignment versatility that a Colston Loveland does? To me, he does not. I think he's very much an inline tight end only. Yeah, he can play in the slot some. Yeah, he can run certain routes that are a good fit for this offense. But all of the special stuff that you're expecting from a versatile player like a Colston Loveland, I think if you ask Kmet to do that, you're going to see a lesser version from him as a player. And that's why I think Colston Loveland should be the tight end one. But that doesn't mean Cole Kmet won't have a role. And I think Ben Johnson has alluded to that throughout the entire process. He called Cole Kmet when they drafted Colston Loveland. And I think we're seeing in training camp and just everything that we're hearing about Loveland, we're seeing Ben Johnson's vision. I mean, he literally he literally alluded to Sean Payton's Jokers. That's what he sees Colston Loveland as. And in these style of offenses, those guys are priceless. Like they're so important from I think, a next level that a Ben Johnson can take his offense when he has these players. He can line up anywhere. He can create matchup problems with, because that's what ultimately, like, that's what they want to do. That's the philosophy of this offense: cause matchup problems and cause mismatches where they can. And Colston Loveland's going to be a huge element. I think the biggest element to do that. All right. Why don't we keep rolling through the narratives? The left tackle battle. The left tackle battle was an interesting one. I don't really know if anyone has like a favorite right now. I guess my favorite would be Ozzy Trapilo, the rookie second rounder, just because Braxton Jones is coming back from injury. He has not had. I think he's still coming back from injury. I don't think he's played yet. I couldn't find that anywhere. It sounds like it's just Kieran and Ozzy in the competition, and Ozzy has been getting first team reps. Again, it sounds like Kieran has played a lot better. I always thought he was more of a guard. He's kind of a narrow guy who doesn't really have a lot of stride length in his pass set. So I always thought he was more of a guard. And Ozzy, I thought, was a tackle only. I thought Ozzy was like a pass protecting, NFL ready tackle that could have some problems in the run game. Again, it's really hard to take away a lot from the offensive line in training camp because, yeah, you are hitting, yeah, you're in full pads, but it's not the same as regular scrimmage or preseason games. I think that's when we'll get more of a feel for who's really going to take this job. And then with Braxton Jones, I mean, it's really about him getting healthy. But right now that Ozzy's getting all the first team reps, I feel like it's really his job to lose, even though they're saying it's a competition. But that would be my pick right now. I could be totally wrong. If anyone's seen any other reporting where it's a more fair competition, please drop a comment. Please reach out to me on Twitter. I would love to know more about that competition. But from what I've seen, it really seems like it's Ozzy's job to lose. And that makes sense. I think you always get a little leery of a rookie left tackle, right? Like, that's a lot of pressure on a guy in year one. But if you just look at all the things that make Ozzy, or I guess his profile, projecting him to the NFL. He was in a pro-style offense with Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was the head coach of the Boston College, obviously, but play caller with the Patriots. He's been known to run an NFL offense. So, like, NFL protection plans, I think that's something Ozzy will pick up right away because he was already doing it. And then I think he's a great fit for this offense. Even though I think there's going to be some struggles as a run blocker, zone blocking, that's definitely where his strong suit was. So the fit makes a ton of sense. So again, I always want to temper my expectations with rookies. I don't want to sit here and tell you that every single rookie the Bears drafted is going to be a Hall of Fame player. But I think that there's enough reasons to be optimistic about Ozzy's fit and how he'll hit the ground running that I do believe that he can hold down this job in year one. So that's kind of where I'll leave it at the left tackle battle. DeAndre Swift, right? And again, I haven't heard much about how DeAndre Swift has actually performed. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a little drink of water while I keep rolling through this. I haven't heard much about any of the running backs and how they perform because, again, training camp is kind of hard to get a feel for how running backs are performing. These guys aren't getting tackled, breaking tackles. They're not really being put in a position to do that. But from just the rep standpoint, it sounds like it's DeAndre Swift's backfield, right? This is going to be, and I was someone who wasn't saying, I said this was going to be more of a split, but from the sounds of it so far, it sounds like Swift's going to be the lead guy. So I'm tentatively buying that. Just because I've heard literally nothing about any of the other backs. I know Ben Johnson kind of alluded to Kyle Monangai right before OTAs ended. So, I mean, maybe he's still in the works. But Roschon, I mean, I thought Roschon just logically as a compliment to Swift would factor in a little bit more. But the Coach Index Speak, I think that's his name on Twitter, said Ben Johnson has literally talked about Roschon Johnson 0 times since being the Bears head coach. And you hear nothing about him. So, I feel like we would know if this was going to be a 50-50 split, or if this was going to be the typical Lions offense where these guys are splitting carries, we would know about it. We would hear about, okay, Roschon's getting a little bit more touches than he's ever has before. But that's not what we've heard. We've heard DeAndre Swift has gotten primarily most of the first team reps. So unless they're just totally holding their cards to the vest, I'm expecting it to be DeAndre Swift's show. And I have my concerns, right? I don't think Swift is a volume rusher. I don't think he's a guy you want to run in between the tackles with a whole bunch. I don't think he's a great outside zone runner either. Now, was Roschon or Monangai? I don't know. But I do have my concerns about that. But I mean, I don't think it's like the worst thing in the world just because the Bears don't have a lot of other great options. If they made a move at running back within the season, that would make a lot of sense. I'm just curious to see, okay, if they know Swift's not a volume rusher, yet they don't trust Monangai or Roschon Johnson to be more of a compliment. And even if they were, like, are those guys going to lead like one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL? Probably not, right? Even when the Lions had Jamal Williams with Ben Johnson, they were like 15th in EPA per play, per rush. Like they ran it decently well from like an accumulative standpoint. They were one of the leading teams in rushing yards at the end of the season, but from an efficiency standpoint, they were not a good rushing team. So I was kind of expecting the Bears to be like that. I'm just curious if they're not like super efficient on the ground, are they going to be more of a pass heavy team? Like, is this season really just about, okay, can Caleb Williams handle all of this? Because we have all these passing game weapons. Our offensive line is probably a better pass blocking unit than a run blocking unit. Is this really just going to be the Caleb Williams show? It's interesting, to kind of dive into what the identity of the Bears will be, because Ben Johnson has been such a balanced attack with his time with Detroit. But I think there's some real concerns with this running game. And I thought DeAndre Swift was always kind of more so like a change of pace back. I never really ever saw him as a guy you're going to run through the tackles a whole bunch. They tried that last year. It was a disaster. He was like one of the worst running backs in rushing yards over expected. All the stats that kind of isolate how a running back's performing, he was not good in. So that's something I want more answers on too. Like I hope to see more answers from the Bears beat reporters, because I think everything that we've seen in training camp has been about Caleb, has been about Ben Johnson, and has been about the pass catchers. That's mainly what I've seen so far on my timeline. So I want to get more clarity. Okay, how is this run game doing? Because that's such a big part of who Ben Johnson was in Detroit, and I think who he wants to be, getting that run game going, being a complementary football team, having other ways to win than just to pass it a whole lot, because I don't think that's ever been him. I don't think that's the tree he comes from. The tree he comes from, they want to run the ball. And I just have concerns if they want to do that solely through DeAndre Swift. All right. Winding down a couple of these narratives, we talked about the pass catchers, or I just brought him up. Luther Burden has been the talk of the town. In the first day he came back from his injury, it was about how he got rung out by Ben Johnson. He couldn't line up in the right spots. He got taken out. Ben Johnson screamed at him. We already talked about that's going to happen, right? It totally makes sense. That is not a Luther Burden problem. That seems like an everyone problem on the Bears. They've all gotten rung out at some point, right? Even DJ Moore got called out for his body language. So I love Luther Burden's response. He said, I need to know where I'm lining up. I need to be on my stuff. And that's totally true. Like he needs to, if he wants to play in this deep of a receiving room, you're going to have to get on your stuff. There's not a lot of margin for error for you to make mistakes and expect to play a whole lot. But I think we also saw the next day, and just like in training camp overall, Luther Burden be able to really shine, right? I think you see the talent. I think you've seen it from some of the plays, that have been recorded and posted on X, but just from what everyone's saying, that, okay, he's dominating the one-on-ones. He's been a really special player. There's no doubt about that. Luther Burden has the talent to be like a top 10 receiver in the NFL. That's never been his problem. It's been the other stuff, the small details, running your routes at full speed on every single rep, blocking, aligning up in the right spots, all that stuff, just the details of the position. That's always been what has held me back from Luther Burden. But the physical talent is unquestioned. It's elite, right? It's top tier. Like, would it be crazy if maybe in year one, it would be crazy if he led this team in receiving yards, targets? It would be a little surprising in year one because he's a rookie. I would say that for most people, for most rookies, especially him being a little rough on the edges from a developmental standpoint. But from a talent perspective, would it be crazy? It wouldn't, honestly, because he is that talented. He is that talented to where he could easily be the best receiver on this team. There's no question about that. I have no doubts about that. He physically probably is the most talented receiver on this team. It's just whether or not how well he picks up this offense. What is his role going to be within this offense? Is he going to be more of a gadget player? Is he going to be more of the Amon-Ra St. Brown player? There's a lot of different possibilities, but it makes so much sense that he's dominated in the one-on-ones. Like, I think that's like the perfect platform for him to show the athleticism, the ball skills, everything that he's really good at, the yak ability. I think like those types of drills are really going to exemplify and demonstrate those skills. It's just, I think the stuff that he needs to, what I would think he needs to work on, just going back from watching him in college, is more of just the thinking through the position, right? Against zone coverage, where am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to settle down against the zone? That was more of my problems with Burden. But if it's a one-on-one, I mean, he's awesome. He's awesome. So I am just, I don't know what my expectations are for him as a rookie, because, you know, if he does pick it up really fast, I mean, full steam ahead on him, right? I don't know, like, how they're going to split up the snaps. Is he just going to be the third receiver? Is it going to be more of a rotation where all of these guys are getting an equal amount of snaps? I think all of that stuff is on the table. It's just whether or not he picks it up quickly is going to determine that, because if he does pick it up quickly, he's too special not to get the ball to. You got to find ways to get the ball in this guy's hand. He's probably the most dynamic player after the catch on their team, and that's on a team with DJ Moore, who's one of the most special players with the ball in his hands as well. So he could be an absolute problem if, you know, that stuff I referred to gets ironed out and he really earns this job. But I think as long as he keeps doing what he's doing and he has these special plays in camp, it's going to be hard to ignore, right? It's going to be hard for them to be like, oh, we'll just keep that guy on the bench. Oh, that guy's just a third receiver. He's just going to keep doing, if he just keeps doing what he's doing and making these special plays, I think he'll find more opportunities to get the ball. But I think really what it comes down to is he going to do the little things? Is he going to block better? Is he going to run his routes at full speed? Is he going to clear out the defense? That's more or less what I'm looking for. I know there's special skills in there. There's no doubt about it. So I'm happy that he's excelling, but it's just hard to gauge kind of what that means in the grand scheme of things. The last narrative I wanted to go over, it's not really a narrative. I think we have an answer now. I was really curious about how these receivers were going to be used in Ben Johnson's offense. And because last year it was such a disaster, the wide receiver usage was like a national clown show for like the football nerds that actually care about that stuff, about like alignment, where receivers are playing. Everyone who cared about that stuff and watched the 2024 Bears were like, what is going on here? Why is Keenan Allen the focal point of your offense? Why is DJ Moore the X receiver? There was a lot of questions that were never answered last year about what the Bears were doing from a receiver standpoint, from a usage standpoint, from an alignment standpoint. And the one clarifying nugget for me was Ben Johnson calling Rome the X receiver. I think that tells me a lot, that they see him more as an outside guy, an isolation guy. And that was always kind of who Rome was. That's where we wanted him to play last year. I was a little interested to see if he would play some big slot for this team because he is a good blocker. He did that a lot at Washington, you know, coming into the formation to block. That is such a big part of who Ben Johnson wants to be, having a receiver he can trust, having receivers, I should say, he can trust to block in the run game. I was curious to see if Rome Odunze would kind of lead that charge, but it sounds like to me he's going to be the X receiver of this offense, and I think that's ultimately where he's going to shine, right? That's where he's made the most money in college, where he was just a one-on-one dominator, and that's exactly what Ben Johnson called him. He said, this is a guy you want on the outside in one-on-one situations, running the outside receiver route tree, and he's going to win his reps more times than not. And I think that's a pretty good definition of Rome Odunze. So he's the X receiver, which to me tells me he's going to be playing the most because I don't think they really have another X receiver. I mean, yeah, you can ask DJ Moore to be the X here and there, but I think he's the most different of Burden, DJ Moore, Zaccheaus. I think all those guys are similar to where you can move those guys around and they can do different things. But in terms of like specializing as an X receiver, I really think that's only Rome and then maybe some Loveland can mix in, which Ben Johnson also alluded to. This is a guy we can also line up outside. I think those are more so guys you can play as the X, which again is the guy on the outside, lined up on the line of scrimmage, usually up against press coverage a lot of the time. You got to have those guys being able to separate, win their reps. And I think we've seen there's been a lot of hype for Odunze too. That, I think some people called him like the wide receiver one of training camp. I'm not going to buy into those narratives. I think it's way too early to tell, especially in training camp when, the bullets aren't live, right? There's a lot of blanks being shot back and forth at each other. So I think it's hard to buy into any of that stuff. But, I'm very excited for what Rome Odunze can do this season. And I'm glad we have some clarity about where he's going to be playing. But other than that, I think that's all the narratives I wanted to run through. I know this was a lot heavily offensive driven. I don't think there was a defensive narrative, but that's what people are going to care about with the Bears, because the offense has been such a travesty for so many years that that's what they want to know about, the offense. And that's what I'm here to report on, give my opinion on. So with that being all, I think it is a good time to sign out of here. I told you guys it was going to be a quick one. I'm really excited to get back with Center next week. We will be previewing the preseason game and kind of just talking about more narrative stuff, more things we've heard out of training camp. Next week is the start of the preseason. I mean, yesterday was technically the start of the preseason, but for the Bears, next week will be the start of the preseason. So until we meet then, y'all, keep it real and bear down.